section number 12 of the Golden Gems of Life. This is a LibraryVox recording. All LibraryVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit libraryvox.org. Hello, I'm Andy Crunch. The Golden Gems of Life by Emory Adams Allen and S.C. Furgeson. Section number 12, Aim of Life. It is the aim that makes the man, and without this he is nothing, as far as the utter destitution of force, weight, and even individuality among men can reduce him to non-entity. The strong gusts and currents of the world sweep him this way and that, without steam or sail to impel, or helm to guide him. If he be not speedily wrecked or run aground, it is more his good fortune than good management. We have never heard a more touching confession of utter weakness and misery than these words from one singularly blessed with the endowments of nature and of providence. My life is aimless. Take heed, young man, of an aimless life. Take heed, too, of a low and sordid aim. A well-ascertained and generous purpose gives vigour, direction, and perseverance to all man's efforts. Its concomitants are a well-disciplined intellect, character, influence, tranquillity, and cheerfulness within, success and honour without. Whatever a man's talents and advantages may be, with no aim, or a low one, he is weak and despicable, and he cannot be otherwise than respectable and influential with a high one. Without some definite object before us, some standard which we are earnestly striving to reach, we cannot expect to obtain to any great height, either mentally or morally. Placing for ourselves high standards, and wishing to reach them without any further effort on our part, is not enough to elevate us in any very great degree. Someone has said, "Nature holds for each of us all that we need to make us useful and happy, but she requires us to labour for all that we get. God gives nothing of value unto man unmatched by need of labour, and we can expect to overcome difficulties only by strong and determined efforts. Here is a great and noble work lying just before us, just as the blue ocean lies out beyond the rocks which line the shore. In our strivings for something better than we have known, we should work for others' good rather than our own pleasure. Those whose object in life is their own happiness find at last that their lives are sad failures. We need to do something each day that shall help us to a larger life of soul, and every word or deed which brings joy or gladness to other hearts lifts us nearer a perfect life, for a noble deed is a step towards God. To live for something worthy of life involves the necessity of an intelligent and definite plan of action. More than splendid dreamings or magnificent resolves is necessary to success in the objects and ambitions of life. Men come to the best results in every department of effort only as they thoughtfully plan and earnestly toil in given directions. Purposes without work is dead. It were vain to hope for good results from mere plans. Random or spasmodic efforts, like aimless shoots, are generally no better than wasted time or strength. The purposes of shrewd men in the business of this life are always followed by careful plans, enforced by work. Whether the object is learning, honour, or wealth, the ways and means are always laid out according to the best rules and methods. The mariner has his chart, the architect his plans, the sculptor his model, and all as a means and condition of success. Inventive genius, or even what is called inspiration, can do little in any department of the theoretic or practical science except as it works by a well-formed plan. Then every step is an advance towards the accomplishment of its object. Every tack of the ship made in accordance with nautical law keeps her steadily nearing the port. Each stroke of the chisel brings the marble into a clearer likeness to the model. No effort or time is lost, for nothing is done rashly or at random. Thus, in the grand aim of life, if some worthy purpose be kept constantly in view, and for its accomplishment every effort be made every day of your life, you will, unconsciously perhaps, approach the goal of your ambition. There can be no question among the philosophic observers of men and events that fixedness of purpose is a grand element of human success. When a man has formed a great sovereign purpose, it governs his conduct, as the laws of nature govern the operation of physical things. Everyone should have a mark in view and pursue it steadily. He should not be turned from his course by other objects ever so attractive. Life is not long enough for any one man to accomplish everything. Indeed, but few can at best accomplish more than one thing well. Many, alas, very many, accomplish nothing. Yet there is not a man endowed with ordinary intellect or accomplishments, but can accomplish at least one useful, important, worthy purpose. It was not without reason that some of the greatest men were trained from their youth to choose some definite object in life, to which they were required to direct their thoughts and to devote all their energies. It became, therefore, a sole and ruling purpose of their hearts, and was almost certainly the means of their future advancement and happiness in the world. Of the thousands of men who are annually coming upon the stage of life, there are few who escape the necessity of adopting some profession or calling, and there are fewer still who, if they knew the miseries of idleness, tenfold keener and more numerous than those of the most laborious profession, would ever desire such an escape. First of all, a choice of business or occupation should be made, and made early, with wise reference to capacity and taste. The youth should be educated for it and, as far as possible, in it. And when this is done, it should be pursued with industry, energy, and enthusiasm, which will warrant success. This choice of an occupation depends partly upon the individual preference and partly upon circumstances. It may be that you are debarred from entering upon that business for which you are best adapted. In that case, make the best choice in your power, apply yourself faithfully and earnestly to whatever you undertake, and you cannot well help achieving a success. Patient application sometimes leads to great results. No man should be discouraged because he does not get on rapidly in his calling from the start. In the more intellectual professions, especially, it should be remembered that a solid character is not the growth of a day, that the mental faculties are not matured except by long and laborious culture. To refine the taste, to fortify the reasoning faculty with its appropriate discipline, to store the cells of memory with varied and useful learning, to train all the powers of the mind systematically, is the work of calm and studious years. A young man's education has been of but little use to him if it has not taught him to check the fretful impatience, the eager haste to drink the cup of life, the desire to exhaust the intoxicating draught of ambition. He should set his aim so high that it will require patient years of toil to reach it. If he can reach it at a bound, it is unworthy of him. It should be of such a nature that he feels the necessity of husbanding his resources. You will receive all sorts of the most excellent advice, but you must do your own deciding. You have to take care of yourself in this world, and you may as well take your own way of doing it. But if a change of business is desired, be sure the fault is with the business and not with the individual. For running hither and thither generally makes sorry work, and brings to poverty ere the sands of life are half run. The north, south, east, and west furnish vast fields for enterprise. But of what avail for the seeker to visit the four corners of the world if he is still dissatisfied, and returns home with empty pockets and idle hands, thinking that the world is wrong and that he himself is a misused and shamefully imposed on creature? The world, smiling at the rebuff, moves on, while he lags behind, groaning over misusage, without sufficient energy to roll up his sleeves and fight his way through. A second profession seldom succeeds, not because a man may not make himself fully equal to its duties, but because the world will not readily believe he is so. The world argues thus: he that has failed in his first profession, to which he dedicated the morning of his life and the springtime of his exertion, is not the most likely person to master a second. To this it might be replied that a man's first profession is often chosen for him by others. His second he usually decides upon for himself. Therefore, his failure in his first profession may, for what he knows, be mainly owing to the sincere but mistaken attention he was constantly paying to his second. Ever remember that it is not your trade or profession that makes you respectable. Manhood and profession or handicraft are entirely different things. An occupation is never an end of life. It is an instrument put into our hands by which to gain for the body the means of living until sickness or old age robs it of life, and we pass on to the world for which this is preparation. The great purpose of living is twofold in character. The one should never change from the time reason takes the helm. It is to live a life of manliness, of purity and honour. To live such a life that, whether rich or poor, your neighbours will honour and respect you as a man of sterling principles. The other is to have some business, in the due performance of which you are put forth all of your exertions. It matters not so much what it is, as whether it be honourable, and it may change to suit the varying change of circumstances. When these two objects, character and a high aim, are fairly before a youth, what then? He must strive to obtain those objects. He must work as well as dream, labour as well as pray. His hand must be as stout as his heart, his arm as strong as his head. Purpose must be followed by action. Then he is living and acting worthily, as becomes a human being with great destinies in store for him. And that is the end of section 12. Recording completed and performed by Andy Crunch.
Section 13 of the Golden Gems of Life. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Adam Nickerson. The Golden Gems of Life by Emory Adams Allen and S.C. Furgeson. Section 13. Success or Failure. Mankind everywhere are desirous of achieving a success, of making the most of life. At times, it is true, they act as if they little cared what was the outcome of their exertions. But even in the lives of the most abandoned and reckless, there are moments when their good angel points out to them the heights to which they might ascend, that a wish arises for something better than they have known. But alas, they have not the will to make the necessary exertions. We are confronted with two ends, success or failure. To win the former, it requires of us labor and perseverance. We must remember that those who start for glory must imitate the mettled hounds of Acton, and must pursue the game not only where there is a path, but where there is none. They must be able to simulate and to dissimulate, to leap and to creep, to conquer the earth like Caesar, to fall down and kiss it like Brutus, to throw their sword like Brennus into the trembling scale, or like Nelson, to snatch the laurels from the doubtful hand of victory while she is hesitating where to bestow them. He that would win success in life must make perseverance his bosom friend, experience his wise counselor, caution his elder brother, and hope his guardian genius. He must not repine because the fates are sometimes against him, but when he trips or falls, let him, like Caesar when he stumbled on shore, stumble forward, and, by escaping the omen, change its nature and meaning. Remembering that those very circumstances which are apt to be abused as the palliatives of failure are the true tests of merit, let him gird up his loins for whatever in the mysterious economy of the future may await him. Thus he will rise superior to ill fortune, and becoming daily more and more impassive to its attacks, will learn to force his way in spite of it, till, at last, he will be able to fashion his luck to his will. Life is too short, says a shrewd thinker, for us to waste one moment in deploring our lot. We must go after success, since it will not come to us, and we have no time to spare. If you wish to succeed, you must do as you would to get in through a crowd to a gate all are anxious to reach. Hold your ground and push hard. To stand still is to give up the battle. Give your energies to the highest employment of which your nature is capable. Be alive, be patient, work hard, watch opportunities, be rigidly honest, hope for the best, and if you are not able to reach the goal of your ambition, which is possible in spite of your utmost efforts, you will die with the consciousness of having done your best, which is, after all, the truest success to which man can aspire. As manhood dawns and the young man catches its first lights, the pinnacles of realized dreams, the golden domes of high possibilities, and the purpling hills of great delights, and then looks down upon the narrow, sinuous, long, and dusty paths by which others have reached them, he is apt to be disgusted with the passage, and to seek for success through broader channels and by quicker means. To begin at the foot of the hills and work slowly to the top seems a very discouraging process, and here it is that thousands of young men have made shipwreck of their lives. There is no royal road to success. The path lies through troubles and discouragements. It lies through fields of earnest, patient labor. It calls on the young man to put forth energy and determination. It bids him build well his foundation, but it promises in reward of this a crowning triumph. There never was a time in the world's history when high success in any profession or calling demanded harder or more earnest labor than now. It is impossible to succeed in a hurry. Men can no longer go at a single leap into eminent positions, as those articles are most highly prized to attain which requires the greatest amount of labor, so the road that leads to success is long and rugged. What matter if a round does break or a foot slip? Such things must be expected, and being expected they must be overcome. Rome was not built in a day, but proofs of her magnificent temples are still to be seen. We each prepare a temple to last through all eternity, a structure to last so long. Can it take but a day to build it? The days of a lifetime are necessary to build the monument mightier than Rome and more enduring than adamant. It is hard, earnest work, step by step, that secures success. And while energy and perseverance are securing the prize for steady workers, others, sitting down by the wayside, are wondering why they, too, cannot be successful. They surely forget that the true key is labor, and that nothing but a strong, resolute will can turn it. The secret of one's success or failure is usually contained in answer to the question, how earnest is he? Success is the child of confidence and perseverance. The talent of success is simply doing what you can do well, and doing well whatever you do, without a thought of fame. Success is the best test of capacity, and materially confirms us in a favorable opinion of ourselves. Success in life is the proper and harmonious development of those faculties which God has given us. Whatever you try to do in life, try with all your heart to do it well. Whatever you devote yourself to it completely. Never believe it possible that any natural ability can claim immunity from companionship of the steady, plain, hard-working qualities and hope to gain its end. There can be no such fulfillment on this earth. Some happy talent and some fortunate opportunity may form the sides of the ladder on which some men mount, but the rounds of the ladder must be made of material to stand wear and tear, and there is no substitute for thoroughgoing, ardent, sincere earnestness. Never put your hand on anything into which you cannot throw your whole self. Never affect depreciation of your own work, whatever it is. Although success is the garden for which all men toil, they have, nevertheless, often to labor on perseveringly without any glimmer of success in sight. They have to live, meanwhile, upon their courage, sowing their seed, it may be in the dark, in the hope that it will yet take root and spring up an achieved result. The best of causes have had to fight their way to triumph through a long succession of failures, and many of the assailants have died in the breach before the fortune has been won. The heroism they have displayed is to be measured not so much by their immediate successes as by the opposition they have encountered and the courage with which they have maintained the struggle. Among the habits required for the efficient prosecution of business of any kind and consequent success, the most important are those of application, observation, method, accuracy, punctuality, and dispatch. Some persons sneer at these virtues as little things, trifles unworthy of their notice. It must be remembered that human life is made up of trifles. As the pence make the pound and the minutes the hour, so it is the repetition of little things, severally insignificant, that make up human character. In the majority of cases where men have failed of success, it has been owing to the neglect of little things deemed too microscopic to need attention. It is the result of practical, everyday experience. That steady attention to matter of detail is the mother of good fortune. Accuracy is also of much importance and an invariable mark of good training in a man. Accuracy in observation, accuracy in speech, accuracy in the transaction of affairs. What is done in business must be done well if you would win the success desired. Give a man power and a field in which to use it, and he must accomplish something. He may not do and become all that he desires and dreams of, but his life cannot well be a failure. God has given to all of us ability and opportunity enough to be moderately successful. If we utterly fail in the majority of cases, it is our own fault. We have either neglected to improve the talents with which our Creator has endowed us, or we fail to enter the door that has opened for us. Such is the constitution of human society, that the wise person gradually learns not to expect too much from life. While he strives for success by worthy methods, he will be prepared for failure. He will keep his mind open to enjoyment, but submit patiently to suffering. Wailings and complainings in life are never of any use. Only cheerful and continuous working in right paths are of real avail. In spite of our best efforts, failures are in store for many of us. It remains, then, for you to do the best you can under all circumstances, remembering that the race is not always to the swift nor the battle to the strong. It is by the right application of swiftness and strength that you are to make your way. It is not sufficient to do the right thing. It must be done in the right way, at the right time, if you would achieve success. Young man, have you ever considered long and earnestly what you were best capable of doing in the world? If not, put it off no longer. You expect to do something. You wish to achieve success. Have you ever thought of what success consisted? It does not consist in amassing a fortune. Some of the most unsuccessful men have done that. Remember, too, that success and fame are not synonymous terms. You cannot all be famous as lawyers, statesmen, or divines. You may or may not accumulate a fortune, but is it not true that wealth, position, and fame are but the accidents of success, that success may or may not be accompanied by them, that it is something above and beyond them? In this sense of the word, you only are to blame if you fall. It is in your power to live a life of integrity and honor. You can so live that all will honor and respect you. You can speak words of cheer to the downhearted, a kindly word of caution to the erring one. You can help remove some obstacle from the paths of the weak. You can incite in the minds of those around you a desire to live a pure, straightforward life. You can bid those who are almost overwhelmed by the billows and waves of sorrow to look up and see the sun shining through the rifts in the dark clouds passing o'er them. All this you can do, and a grand success will be your reward. Away then with your lethargy. You are a man. Arise in your strength and your manhood. Resolve to be in this, its true sense, a successful man. And then if wealth or fame wait on you, and men delight to do your honor, these will be but added laurels to your brow, but the gilded frame encasing success. End of section 13.
Section 14 of the Golden Gems of Life. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Robert Drexler. The Golden Gems of Life by Emory Adams Allen and S.C. Furgeson. Section 14, Dignity of Labor. Dignity of Labor. Labor, either of the head or the hand, is the lot of humanity. There are no exceptions to this general rule. The rich who have toiled early and late for a competence find their present ease more unendurable than their past exertions, and the round of pleasures to which in other days they looked for a reward of their toil and actual realization resolve themselves into drudgeries, often worse than those from which they vainly fancied they had escaped. The king on his throne is beset with cares, and the labor he performs is ofttimes far heavier than any borne by the poorest peasant in his dominions. The high and low alike acknowledge the universal sway of labor. That which is thus the common lot of mankind and reigns with such universal sway cannot be otherwise than honorable in the highest degree. Labor may be a burden and a chastisement, but it is also an honor and a glory. Without it, nothing can be accomplished. All that to man is great and precious is acquired only through labor. Without it, civilization would relapse into barbarism. It is the forerunner and indispensable requisite to all the sweet influence of refinement. It is the herald of happiness, and makes the desert to blossom as a garden of roses. It whitens the sea with sails and stretches bands of iron across the continent. It is labor that drives the plow, scatters the seed, and causes the fields to wave in golden harvests for the good of man. It gathers the grain and sends it to different regions of the earth to feed other millions toiling in less favored channels there. Labor gathers the gossamer web of the caterpillar, the cotton from the field and the fleece from the flock, and weaves them into raiment soft, warm, and beautiful. The purple robe of royalty, the plain man's sober suit, the fantastic dress of the painted savage, and the furry coverings of Arctic lands are alike the results of its handiwork and proofs of its universal sway and honor. Labor molds the brick, splits the slate, and quarries the stone. It shapes the column and rears not only the humble cottage, but the gorgeous palace, the tapering spire and stately dome. It is by labor that mankind have risen from a state of barbarism to the light of the present. It is only by labor that progression can continue. Labor, possessing such inherent dignity and being the grand measure of progress, it is the most fitting that man should not taste life's greatest happiness, or wield great influence for good, or reach the summit of his ambitious resolves, save only as the result of long and patient labor. Life is a short day, but it is a working day and not a holiday. Man was made for action, and life is a mere scene for the exercise of the mind and engagement of the hand. A scene where the most important occupations are, in one sense, but species of amusement, and where so long as we take pleasure in the pursuit of an object it matters but little that we secure it or not, or that it fades when acquired. Life to some is drudgery, to some pain, to some art, to others pleasure, but to all work. Let none feel a sense of sore disappointment that life to them becomes routine. It is a necessary consequence of our natures that our work and our amusements, our businesses and our pleasures should tend to become routine. The same wants, the same demands, and similar duties meet us on the threshold of every day. We look forward to some great occasion on which to display ourselves, some grand event in which to give proof of a heroic spirit, and complain of the petty routine of daily life. On the contrary, it is this succession of little duties, little works apparently of no account, which constitute the grand work of life. And we display true nobility when we cheerfully take these up and go forward content to labor and to wait. Alas for the man or woman who has not learned to work. They are but poor creatures. They know not themselves. They depend on others for support. Let them not fancy they have a monopoly of enjoyment. They have missed the sweetest pleasure of life, even the pleasure of self-reliant feeling, born of vanquished difficulties. They know not the thrill of pleasure experienced by him who carries difficult projects to a successful termination. Each rest owes its deliciousness to toil, and no toil is so burdensome as the rest of him who has nothing to task and quicken his powers. They do not realize in their blind pride what labor has done for them. It was labor that rocked them in their cradle and nourished their pampered life. Without it, the very garments on their back would be unspun. He is indebted to toil for the meanest thing that ministers to his wants, save only the air of heaven, and even that, in God's wise providence, is breathed with labor. Labor explores the rich veins of deeply buried rocks, extracting the gold and silver, the copper and tin. Labor smelts the iron and molds it into 1,000 shapes for use and ornaments, from the massive pillar to the tiniest needle, from the ponderous anchor to the wire gauze, from the mighty flywheel of the engine to the polished purse ring or glittering bead. Labor hews down the gnarled oak, shapes the timbers, builds the ship, and guides it over the deep, bringing to our shores the produce of every clime. But mere physical, manual labor is not the sole end of life. It must be joined with higher means of improvement, or it degrades instead of exalts. The poorest laborer has intellect, heart, imagination, tastes, as well as bones and muscles, and he is grievously wronged when compelled to exclusive drudgery for bodily subsistence. It is the condition of all outward comforts and improvements, whilst at the same time it conspires with higher means and influences in ministering to the vigor and growth of the mind. Not only has labor inherent dignity, but it is almost a necessity for mind as well as body. Man is an intelligence, sustained and preserved by bodily organs, and their active exercise is necessary to the enjoyment of health. It is not work, but overwork, that is hurtful. It is not hard work that is injurious so much as monotonous, fagging, hopeless work. All hopeful work is healthful, and to be usefully and properly employed is one of the great secrets of happiness. Most interesting is the contemplation of the victories achieved by the hand of labor, victories far grander than any achieved by physical force on the field of battle. For as conquests are wrested from nature, the very elements are brought under subjection and made to contribute to the good of man. It displays its triumph in 1,000 cities, its glories in shapes of beauty. It speaks in words of power. It makes the sinewy arm strong with liberty, the poor man's heart rich with content, crowns the swarthy and sweaty brow with honor, dignity, and peace. It is one of the best regulators of practical character. It evokes and disciplines obedience, self-control, attention, application, and perseverance, giving a man deftness and skill in his physical calling, and aptitude and dexterity in the affairs of ordinary life. Work is the law of our being, the living principle that carries men and nations onward. Manual labor is a school in which men are placed to get energy of purpose and character, a vastly more important endowment than the learning of other schools. The laborer is placed indeed under hard masters, the power of physical elements, physical sufferings, and want. But these stern teachers do a work which no compassionate, intelligent friend could do for us, and true wisdom will bless Providence for this sharp necessity. Labor is not merely the grand instrument by which the earth is overspread with fruitfulness and beauty, the ocean subdued, and matter wrought into innumerable forms for comfort and ornament. It has a far higher function, which is to give force to the will, efficiency, courage, the capacity of endurance, and of devotion to far-reaching plans. We must ever remember that it is the intention only that disgraces, that all honest work is honorable. And if your occupation be not so high-sounding as you would like, still it is better to work faithfully at this until opportunity opens the door to something higher. Because you do not find just what suits you, to refuse to labor at all, to play the drone, is to act unworthy of yourself and your destiny. Neither is it beneath you to make yourself useful, regardless of what your position and wealth may be. A gentleman by birth and education, however richly he may be endowed with worldly position, cannot but feel that he is in duty bound to contribute his quota of endeavor towards the general well-being in which he shares. He cannot be satisfied with being fed, clad, and maintained by the labors of others without making some suitable return to the society that upholds him. It matters not what a person's natural gifts may be. He cannot expect to attain in any profession to a high degree of success without going through with a vast deal of work, which taken by itself would rightly be called drudgery. That quality in man which, for want of a better name, we call genius, does not consist in an ability to get along without work, but on the contrary is generally the faculty of doing an immense amount of work. Young men sometimes think that it is not respectable to be at work, and imagine that there is some character of disgrace or degradation belonging to toil. No greater mistake could be made. Instead of being disgraceful to engage in work, it is especially honorable. The most illustrious names in history were hard workers. No one whom posterity delights to honor ever dreamed or idled his way to fame. To be idle and useless is neither an honor nor a privilege. Though persons of small natures may be content merely to consume, men of average endowments, of manly expectations, and of honest purpose will feel such a condition to be incompatible with real honor and true dignity. The noblest man on earth is he who puts his hands cheerfully and proudly to honest labor, and goes forth to conquer honor and worth. Labor is mighty and beautiful. The world has long since learned that man cannot be truly man without employment. Would that young men might judge of the dignity of labor by its usefulness rather than by the gloss it wears. We do not see a man's nobility in dress and toilet adornments, but in the sinewy arm, roughened as it may be by hardy, honest toil, under whose farmer's or mechanic's vest a kingly heart may beat. Exalt thine adopted calling or profession. Look on labor as honorable, and dignify the task before thee, whether it be in the study, office, counting room, workshop, or furrowed field. There is equality in all, and the resolute will and pure heart may ennoble either. End of section 14.